AskReddit. What's an open secret that doesn't have a documentary about it yet? The province of New Brunswick, Canada is basically the play toy of a small handful of wealthy families. Irving, McCain, Oland. The government is just there for show. I remember reading a stat a number of years ago that 65% of the population of New Brunswick was directly employed by those three families and something like 80% was indirectly employed. I mean, most of Canada is just a couple of corporations in a trench coat. Good one. I just googled this and Irving owns like 200 companies in New Brunswick. That's insane. It just can't be a level playing field when you have a company that accounts for over half your economy. The story I always like to tell is how I used to work at a gas station as a pump attendant in the late 90s. We used to have this customer come in and just be a nasty, rude piece of shit to everyone working. After about a month or so of this, he just stopped coming in. Turns out the Irving private security dudes looked like Secret Service agents, paid a visit to him at his home and he stopped coming in. Now, we were all happy about it because it was a huge pain in the ass having to deal with this guy all the time, but the thought that has always remained with me is how Irving security was able to track a private citizen down and show up at their home with zero repercussions, backlash, etc. As much of a pain as he was, it still seemed unethical. Of course there are bigger issues. Property taxes skyrocketing in Canada's poorest province for everything but Irving owned properties being the biggest bee in the bonnet for a lot of folks. Oh, and the mysterious brain disease that the government keeps shutting down research on, with the popular speculation being that it has something to do with Irving ventures with chemicals, pesticides, etc. Oh, and the buying up of crown lands for logging at ridiculously reduced prices, and Irving buying all the news publication agencies and radio stations in the province, and, well, you get the idea. Steroid use in Hollywood. Everyone knows it's happening, but I don't think the extent is widely known. When a male actor puts on a lot of muscle for a role, they have most likely used steroids. Even if they have just put on a little muscle, they probably still used steroids, because you can't gain fast enough to get in shape for the start of filming. And because it is technically illegal, no one will ever admit it. What makes it worse is these people, and their trainers, will write articles for Men's Health where they go through their workouts, ignoring the fact that they took growth hormone for a year. There have been a few good documentaries about doping in sports, but I think we need one about Hollywood. I watched Die Hard for the first time last Christmas. I know, and was struck by how Bruce Willis' body in that film worked, and still works, so well as an action movie strong guy who goes to the gym type body. If it was shot today, it feels like there would be so much more pressure to be a dehydrated, roided up dude with a 10-pack. My husband is into fitness and follows bodybuilders, has one of his bachelor's degrees in exercise science, and has a number of friends who use steroids. He told me some of the telltale signs, and now he and I play Who's Juiced while watching movies or sharing social media posts back and forth. I think it's incredibly unfair that stars aren't honest about being on something. Just like those on Ozempic and or surgeons' tables saying they keep fit by hiking in the Hollywood Hills and chasing their toddler around. These celebrities are showing unattainable bodies saying, just eat clean and hit the gym every day. False. I don't remember who it was, but some ripped celebrity was talking about shirtless scenes and how dehydrated he has to be for them. Basically, he avoids water for 2 days and shoots, then hydrates, and they have to give him a few days before he does it again. He has to get as close to organ failure death as possible to show an impossible aesthetic. I am open with anyone who asks. I've taken Ozempic and had Botox, now Daxxify, for years. I don't look like a celebrity, but if anyone asks, I'm an open book. The way old folks are treated in care homes. There is a lot that could be exposed about elder and end-of-life issues. Making the enormous monthly cost of a nursing home, $10,000 for a shared room, or assisted living, more than $6,000 known and what those places are really like to live in. The estate planning industry that popped up in the US to help people hide assets from the government so that Medicaid will pay but not take the house. The push to integrate mentally ill seniors with the rest of the population and the impact that has on the other residents. Seniors avoiding marriage to keep old pensions, etc. the entire hospice industry and how they aren't going to be there to help at all unless there is an emergency. I could go on. I've personally seen elderly couples who had been married for decades get divorced because at their income level they would get better benefits as two single people rather than a married couple, and they couldn't afford to live without the benefits. The system is fucked. The Mormon Church is sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars in stock and real estate. They do almost no charity work directly from those funds. The majority of the humanitarian funds the church claims are from an equivalent dollar value of labor from their members and another entirely separate charity arm which doesn't involve church contributions. My personal conspiracy theory is that the Mormon Church is secretly the wealthiest private organization in the world. The Catholic Church makes them look like paupers. Maybe true, but the Mormons only have 17 million members total across the world and yet are the top 3 richest religions. They own over 2% of Florida alone. They have a confirmed $236 billion, but many experts estimate that it's a little over $500 billion since they have hidden a lot of assets in shell companies. And to make matters worse, only less than 25% of those members are active and attending. I've seen numbers as low as 16%. I mean, you have to hand it to them. They are a religion less than 200 years old that was made up of mostly poor immigrants in the 1800s with relatively few members. Even now, that has amassed so much wealth. They must have hired some top-rung wealth managers. And I will say that most of the Mormons I have met personally have been nice people. But the corporation organization itself seems shady imo. 10% of everyone's salaries adds up. And it helps when they make donating mandatory to access the highest levels of religious ordinances. Just like Scientology. There's an industry that basically takes guardianship of elderly people by getting them declared incompetent, without their knowledge. They move them into nursing homes, sell off their homes and assets and take over their money. It's like the title theft scam, but with people being taken over rather than just real estate. It's brutal and frightening. It wasn't a documentary, but wasn't there a movie like this? I care a lot. I think there definitely needs to be more press about this. I had no idea this documentary existed, The Guardians. Also, good on John Oliver for reporting on it, but I have no idea how I missed it as well. This is my greatest fear. Medical bureaucracy is terrifying. I don't have kids to advocate for me either. Years ago I was stripped of all my rights and sent to inpatient after just going to a therapist intake. I moved and just wanted to see a therapist closer to my new apartment. I wasn't having the best time but I was nowhere near suicidal. This lady just decided I was a danger to myself because I was honest that I did try when I was a child, over 20 years ago, as a direct result of a brutal traumatic event. I was in there for 2 days, and if I didn't have a supportive family or that time off of work already I shudder to think of the long-term implications. It cost me over $5,000, and I would have been fired if I just no-call-no-showed for 2 days. It truly would have ruined my life if I didn't have family with access to that kind of money. It still took me years to be able to pay them back. One person making one call can ruin your life. I still have nightmares. Before we go further, please press the red subscribe button below if you're enjoying this so far. How some of the top fashion magazines send young models over to meet wealthy donors in hotel rooms who will help them get the modeling contract they were after. Many years ago I was 20, living and working modeling OS and was sent to a hotel to meet a director of a huge TVC campaign I had just booked that was earning me $200,000. It was being shot in some gorgeous islands on boats, etc. It was my first really big job. I was very excited. The director sat in a booth of this boutique hotel and asked for my modeling portfolio and flipped through each page telling me why I was right for the job. By one stroke two-way though the folio he started explaining what each photo made him want to do to me. I knew I had 10 days on location with the 60-year-old fucking creep. I was trapped though. I managed to let on I was willing to leave the darker bar area where we were sitting to have a more private conversation about the job. As soon as I could see the foyer I went to make a run for it. He grabbed my arm with his no you don't, pushed me into a corner and rammed his revolting tongue down my throat. I kicked him as hard as I could in the balls and made a run for it. By the time I got back to the model apartment I had already been cancelled for the job, obviously, and within the hour my agent was there abusing the living shit out of me. Not so shitty small-time agency, this was a respected world-renowned one. She was apoplectic. Did I know how much the job was worth? How much this was earning her? Don't I know how the industry fucking works? I explained to her what happened but she acted like I was the one who was an idiot for not getting it. At 1 AM I was kicked out of the house I was living in a foreign country. A little over a year later I was living in a model house with 8 other girls. I was the only one who hadn't been drugged, raped, sexually assaulted. Another city was full of girls warning that lower grade agents will take your passport to make a copy, but actually keep your passports and force you to stay and work gentlemen's clubs. This was common knowledge and girls were constantly being trapped. Another job I was sent home for refusing to take all my clothes off for the owner of the company. He yelled at me saying, "You know I can get some Russian slut to do this for free." Again, I just left. I have a dozen stories like this. Life might seem glamorous if you're a top name, but I was earning a very comfortable living, but it took me standing up for myself unrelentingly, being on at every moment, never really socializing, walking out, and running for my life more than I care to admit. Edit. Whoa. I woke up to so many comments. I'll try to reply as I can. I just wanted to thank everyone for the lovely thoughts and words. The age of all of the tech that is the backbone of our whole world. What you as the consumer or any frontline employee is interacting with is usually just a GUI overlay or a program that is manipulating something much, much older. The worst tend to be government, certain sectors in aviation and transit and banking. Also, people don't know that one company, that completely flies under the radar and has no real oversight, owns a very large portion of the software and has their fingers in a huge amount of financial and retail transactions. Sticking modern paint jobs on 20U systems is the bread and butter of what I do for a living. Nobody wants to build anything new except startups and massive orgs. Everything in the middle is decades of band-aids and lipstick on something some startup built and sold forever ago. Larium mefloquine. There's a mini YouTube documentary about it, but it's not nearly big enough or been seen by enough people for me to count that. If you don't know, Larium is an anti-malaria drug that was prescribed to many people in the late 80s and 90s, and prescribed by first world militaries up until the 2010s. I personally have family who was impacted and still suffers from the effects of Larium, but the people I know at least didn't have their brains and lives completely destroyed by it like so many others have. It's been linked to countless suicides and homicides, including the Kandahar massacre, causing paranoia, hallucinations, and night terrors that literally take your worst fears and bring them to life, because the mefloquine toxicity acts on the limbic system where your amygdala, aka the fear center, is. Many people have killed themselves over the dreams alone. Every single detainee at GTMO was dosed, for no reason, with the 1250mg dose that would be prescribed to cure someone who had malaria, not even the 250mg prophylactic dose. This was done without testing the detainees for malaria and without reason to believe they had it. People from the same regions as the prisoners who were at GTMO as employees were not subjected to it, and it is widely believed to have been done specifically to bring about the debilitating side effects as psychological waterboarding. There is evidence, though not proof, that Larium may have been created as part of MKUltra, when the CIA was trying to synthesize mind control drugs using quinolones. Currently, there are still class action lawsuits in progress in the US and Europe over the military's mass prescribing this as the drug of choice to prevent malaria, even though there have been much safer and equally effective options since the 90s. Google it, you might fall down the rabbit hole like I have many times after seeing how it affects my family members who took it. It's terrifying how much awful shit it's linked to. I took mefloquine for several months while in Haiti. At first the dreams were psychedelic. Then you'd be standing in the middle of a room and you would be absolutely certain, as though it was happening to you right then, that the ceiling would cave in and you would be crushed under the concrete. Like a waking dream you can't wake up from. Or I'd suddenly remember the fish I had for lunch and become convinced that I had swallowed a bone, that I could literally feel it lodge in my throat, that I couldn't breathe. Then the panic sets in and you actually can't breathe. It's almost impossible to describe. Except you see it happening to you in your mind's eye like you're dreaming. But you are standing there and your body is reacting like it's happening to you right then. And your brain fuses the two things, dream and reality. Yeah, I stopped the methylquine cobalt mining, specifically egg and DRC, and the, politely said, questionable supply chains from mines to Apple and other tech giants that basically make it impossible to definitely exclude child labor involved, yet these companies pretend that we're the case. Siddharth Kara's book is good, but this needs more attention. How much the military actually waste. If they don't use what they are allotted one fiscal year, they don't get the same the next, so towards the end of the year they'll throw ammo off boats in the ocean and purposely break office furniture and burn excess uniforms so the same amount at minimum is allotted the next year. Haha. Working cyber. I've seen this but in a more subtle way. If we have 40k left, they send us to classes for training, or provide vouchers for us to purchase a class. What's sad is when we need new systems, or better network defense capabilities, the money is nowhere to be found 2 months into the year lol. Some of these routers cost 50k and up. It's crazy. That huge budget goes to contractors. The rest of us got busted buildings, declining services, enlistment bonuses were slashed ages ago, shitty desktops, on-base medical facilities are drowning so they send us off base. We will get some new bombs and planes, however SMH. BTW, unless something has changed since 2022, outside of gear for deployments, the military forces the troops to buy their uniforms. They're purchased from contractors, private companies who make large profits. Was so pissed when they switched from ABUs to opts a year before retirement. Project 2025. People need to know that the Project 2025 leader is Paul Dunce, former Chief of Staff at the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, during the Trump administration and now director of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project. OPM provides HR services for almost every federal agency. One of the core parts of Project 2025 is to identify Democrats working in federal agencies and do mass purges of them, then replace them all with Trump Republican partisan loyalists. Literally, they have a list of over 10,000 people as replacements. This is shit you only thought you'd see in other lesser run countries. Once it's done, it will be irreparable. Institutional knowledge will be lost. There will be no continuity. Every agency and program will become partisan. And every administration afterwards will have to find who belongs to the opposite party and mass purge them to get anything done. It's sickening. The head of the Heritage Foundation, which is behind Project 2025 and writes policy guidelines for incoming Republican administrations, just promised a second American Revolution. Meanwhile, Trump is promoting calls to jail top elected officials and invoking military tribunals of his political opponents. Project 2025 also calls for the president to eliminate semi-independence of the DOJ and other agencies, take direct control of the DOJ, and dictate who to prosecute. The way doctors are made in the US is basically a form of indentured servitude if you aren't from a rich family. You have to obey a system that is using you for massive profits. And if you wipe out or get dismissed at any point, you have 250-500k in debt to punish you, make you reconsider your decision to leave. Some experiences of residency include low pay, 6-day work weeks, forced night shifts, and having little to no say about your schedule. The last one isn't exactly limited to residency though. Interestingly, the modern residency program was developed by Dr. Halstead, who was wildly coked out his entire career. No wonder those 6-day 12+ HR days were acceptable. Thanks for watching. Please press the like button if you enjoyed and the notification bell next to the subscribe button to never miss another video. Let me know your thoughts below. Bye.